All right, guys, this is Music Universal Language Podcast. This is the 22nd episode, and today my guest is Derek. I'm not going to try to say your last name. What's up, buddy? How do you say your last name? Let's get that over with.
Schyvink.
Schyvink. All right, cool. I definitely want to screw that up, so I'm glad you did. Cool. How's it going, man? You in the studio right now?
I'm in the studio right now, brother. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. Staying healthy, you know. I'm trying to stay busy, really. Stay occupied, right? Do productive stuff. You find yourself going to the studio more, kind of trying to work on stuff, or
I kind of live at the studio, to be honest with you. There's right now, technically, I'm shut down as far as having people come into the studio to record, but I've been looking for ways to be able to work with people online, and so far I've come up with a couple of pretty good solutions, so we'll see how everything continues to work out here.
Right on. Well, we'll get into how the studio and radio station all came about, but first let's go a little further back. How did you kind of get started in music in general? Did you start with a specific instrument, or how young were you?
Well, let's see. When I first started playing, that's a good question, Jacob, because to be honest, I don't really remember when I started playing. So I come from a musical family, and by that, what I mean, when I was a kid, both of my parents, and then my dad's two brothers and their wives, so my uncles and aunts, 6 of them had a touring band. And when I was a kid growing up, I grew up on the road with them for years. And some of my earliest memories are, being in the van, waking up, pulling into a Holiday Inn, things like that. And even when they would come off the road and we'd be home, there was band practice all the time, and all the stuff was set up in the basement. I'd just go down and start, whacking away on the drums, or I would pick up my uncle's bass and start playing it, whatever the case may be. And from there, it all kind of progressed. So technically, the first instrument I was really schooled on was drums, and I learned from a great drum teacher named Greg Callenber here in the area. Really I started on drums, but overall, man, I can't remember a time when my world wasn't completely engulfed by music.
So were you as young as 5 or 6, or was it 8 or 9, 10, maybe?
So I was probably 9 years old when I really started to play the drums on my own, and I was in high school by the time I started to take lessons.
Okay, cool. What was the family band called? What was the name?
The Shy Bros Band. So Shy Bros, like Schyvink Brothers, Shy Bros.
Oh, cool. And so it was your dad and uncle's band?
Yeah, my dad and his 2 brothers.
2 brothers.
And 2 of them, and then all of their wives. So my mom and my 2 aunts, and it was my dad, my brothers, and my mom and my aunts.
Dude, that's so cool. So did you have cousins on the road too, or was that later?
Well, I was the first one born out of all the cousins. I do have cousins that play now. So it's definitely branched out quite a bit. But as far as when I was a kid, there were no other kids around. It was just me, and and that was it in the band. So,
dude, that's awesome.
Kind of like a band, kind of like a child of a band as gypsies touring down the road, I guess.
And so, would you guys go all over the country, or kind of like a regional thing, or?
So they toured a lot in the East Coast and down south. So, South Carolina was a big one for them. Kind of like the circuit that they would hit. And, of course, I was just a little kid, but from what I remember, and from I've got cassette tapes that kind of document everything. Illinois, Ohio, South Carolina, Missouri, states like that, Arkansas.
Yeah. Was it overall a rock band sound, or?
Well, they switched it up a lot over the years. So there was, they started off as just a straight up rock band. And then they kind of started to branch out into kind of more disco-based stuff in, the late 70s and stuff like that. Whatever it was that would get the dance floor packed, that's what they were doing. And, to be honest, I'll say a lot of the disco stuff really surfaces in a lot of my playing today, particularly in my bass playing. I'm a real fan of slap bass and busy bass lines, and incorporating that style of bass playing into heavy metal or even country music or whatever it is I'm working on at the time.
Bringing that funky bass to the.
Absolutely.
That's dope, man. I love that.
Yeah.
You gotta have a good bass line, man. Goes such a long way. All right, so obviously maybe there was no lack of encouragement. Like your parents had no problem with you playing music or pursuing it. Is that safe to say?
Oh, that's definitely safe to say.
Wanted you to.
Yeah, heavily encouraged. Heavily encouraged, yes.
So are you okay, so by the time you got into high school, you were playing drums on your own.
Yeah.
And was it like as soon as you were doing lessons, did you like kind of get in a band, or was that later?
Well, I started my own band before I took lessons, to be honest with you. So I met this kid named Brad Lutton, and we were in middle school at the time, 7th grade math class. And the truth of the matter is we didn't like each other at all at first. And the way we met was we were gonna fight. We were gonna have a fight after school one day, and we were gonna meet at the soccer goals out back of school. And we did. We both showed. But we weren't too interested in fighting. But so we showed up, and he says to me, "So I hear your dad gives guitar lessons. Is that true?" And I said, "Yeah." So instead of getting into a fight, I took him to meet my dad so he could ask my dad about guitar lessons. And he started giving Brad guitar lessons. And from there, I believe that very night we had our first, band practice, and we played Wipeout. That was the one tune that we played. But from there, we stayed, that was 7th grade, so that was 1987, and we still perform together as 2211 even now. We both have different projects that we're working on, so we're not as busy as we used to be with that, but we're still a united front up to this very day.
So the guy you thought you were going to fight now is a connection for life.
Yeah. Yep.
Dude, that's how a lot of great things happen.
Yeah, right?
Because it's like half the reason you want to fight is probably because you're so similar, you're like almost jealous of each other or something, you know what I mean?
Something weird like that, yeah.
But all right, so you guys continued this band into high school.
Yeah.
Whenever you started in 7th grade, and then you kind of got more members by high school sort of thing, or?
Yeah, so by the time we were in 9th grade, we had added 2 people into the band. When our first gig ever was a house party. We played in a garage. It was like a block party, actually, in the middle of the summer. I think it would have been like July of '89. And then that following September, we played for the high school homecoming dance. And we flopped. We weren't very good at all. We weren't, but we got up there and we gave it our all.
Right.
And then from there, we just kind of kept on trucking. We worked through all various incarnations of that band, but by the time we were seniors in high school and the year right after that were very pivotal for us because we formed the band 2211. And that's the band that I would say in my career has been the most, the most successful, the one that I've spent the most time with. We were an all original band. We recorded, we have 5 albums that we've recorded, and had a lot of luck opening up for nationals. A lot of our, heroes we got to meet and work with, things like that.
So after high school, so it officially you got the name kind of officially started after high school, or?
Yeah, we got the name officially started, and we had the lineup solidified too, all at the same time. So,
what's the name come first? Sorry.
Well, the name came from when we had the first solid lineup. There was Brad Lutton and myself, and then Brad's younger brother Tim, and my younger brother Scott, and then we had a drummer named Jared Edwardson, and then a vocalist named Chuck Yankee. And so there were 6 of us. So 2 brothers, 1 guy, 2211. That's how we came up with that.
Oh, that's cool, man. And so wait, when did you make the transition to bass, though? If you originally were doing drums for?
Well, yeah, I made the transition to bass my senior year of high school because we were going through various lineup changes, and in my background, I had learned how to play guitar, bass, drums, etc. And we weren't able to find a bassist to replace the guy who had just left the band, but we were able to find a drummer, who was Jared. And Jared Edwardson is a phenomenal drummer. He's one of the best drummers I've ever heard in my life, and that's including some of the bigger names that are out there. Jared could hold his own with pretty much anybody. Oh, yeah. And so we were comfortable putting him on drums and transitioning me over to bass at that point.
And you would kind of just like always, like you said, you play drums the most, but you pick up multiple instruments at home, and you knew how to like do, rhythm and whatnot. You knew chords, whatever, basic.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Guitar and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
So were you like hesitant at first, or were you almost like excited to start playing bass for it?
I was excited to start playing bass. I really liked it immediately. It's always been the instrument I felt most drawn to, because bass is kind of a combination, to me anyways, it's kind of a combination of drums and guitar. There's the percussive aspect of it to where, you're slapping or, sometimes playing pretty hard on those strings, man. And then there's also the melodic component to where, you can play melodies on the bass, as well as, rhythmic patterns and things of that nature. It's just, to me, I find myself to be the most creative on that instrument. So I was really actually very excited to step into that role.
Cool. And it's probably like, since you'd already done drums for so long, the bass and drums is like the core, the backbone of the song. So that's probably, that gave you a whole nother kind of like tightness with the rhythm. And it takes, kind of a bigger person. You probably acknowledge, hey, this guy's a better drummer, right? So you're like, I should fucking do this, and we'll be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had no problem with that, and I mean, when it comes to the music business, we're notorious for being egotistical people, but I'll tell you, that doesn't fly in any successful band. You've got to be willing to do what's right for the band and for the project. And at that point, I had no problem stepping away from the drums. It didn't mean I couldn't play drums anymore. I just wasn't playing drums for the band,
Right, exactly. And like in the end, it's better for the band. And so are you guys have two lead singers, or?
Well, we did split lead vocals at that time. So Chuck sang, and that's all he did was sang. And then I sang and played bass. And we did switch off leads. We did dual leads a lot. We harmonies a lot, things like that. And then there came a point in time to where Chuck was no longer in the band, and I was singing lead mostly on my own. But at that point, Brad Lutton stepped over, and he did some singing too.
Cool. So have you, Brad, and maybe originally Chuck, always done the songwriting more, or who kind of does? Is it a collaborative thing?
Oh, it's always been a collaborative thing. So now, moving forward a little bit, getting more into, like, let's say now we're at about 1996, 97. Jared Edwardson, who was the original drummer at 2211, had moved on. Josh Stage came in and replaced him on drums. And so now we had, Chuck, Brad, myself, Scott, Tim, and Josh. And the way that we wrote songs was usually it would be either Brad or I would bring in a riff. But, that was in the very beginning. As time moved on, Tim actually grew into a very, a strong component of the songwriting process. He brought in a lot of the riffs as well. And we would write the songs, though, together. We would start, branching off of one particular idea. And then, next thing you know, we've got something that incorporates that original riff, but it's, completely different. And we did a lot of our songwriting together. And this was, we recorded our first album with that kind of a formula. The second album of ours was the one that really, where we started to gain some notoriety. And by that point in time, Chuck was gone. It was Brad, Tim, Scott, myself, and Josh, the five of us. And so 2211 Fives, that's what this album was, which is largely considered to be our debut album, but was actually our second album. Okay. And off of that album, again, same songwriting process prevailed. It's always been a very democratic process to where people would bring their stuff in. And, there's really no way you could justify saying any one person wrote the song.
Right.
And, that whole album was a collaborative process. Yeah.
You guys wrote all the lyrics together, just kind of like how it would form as it was?
Oh, no, I wrote the lyrics. I wrote the lyrics for that album. And for all of the albums after that. That was one of my main parts, was writing the lyrics. And a lot of times I would bring in a riff that would start it off too. But as far as, melodies and stops and, we like to do, we're all fans of like heavy metal music and, Pantera, Metallica, bands like that, to where there'd be a lot of, stops and starts and, all of a sudden this part comes out of nowhere that you didn't expect. We really tried to incorporate that into the songwriting a lot. So that's where it would become a collaborative process. And then also, working with odd timings, switching off from, standard beat, the verse, chorus, and then into a, song within a song sort of an idea.
Cool. And so would you kind of like, so you guys would write the music together and then the lyrics would come after the fact sort of thing? Or make sure sometimes you'd have them before and sometimes you wouldn't?
Most of the time I had the lyrics already started anyways. I'd carry around a notebook everywhere, and I used to write all of the time.
But you didn't really get the melody developed yet because there was no music there?
Yeah, I would get a melody going in my head, and I would kind of write the music to that, but I would, hear something we were working on, and I would think, hey, this set of lyrics I'm working on would work really well with this. So, the melody that I had in my head originally would a lot of times bite the dust, and I would, just kind of make it work for the song we were working on at the time. And, all of our albums were that way. So we had, the 2211 Fives album, and then our next album after that was Eclipse Prevail, and then Meanwhile on Planet Earth was the next one. And then, all of those songs were written kind of like that. And there were a couple of cases where I wrote, the basic format of the song, the chords for the verse and maybe the chorus and the lyrics myself, and I'd bring them in. But even in those circumstances, when I would do that, the ideas that were contributed by the other members completely transformed my original idea. So the way that the song ended up was, in no way what I had originally brought to the band.
That's cool, man, and that's cool. You kind of stayed open for it to evolve like that or change,
Well, man, they're my brothers, and we grew up together. And like I said, the way we met was Brad asking for guitar lessons from my dad. Well, my dad ended up giving us all guitar lessons, so we all kind of learned from the same source in the very beginning days, and we were kids when we started, and we grew up together into our adult years. And I don't think any one of us would ever have dreamed of, trying to, occupy territory over the rest of us. It was just, too much of a brotherhood.
That's cool, man. That almost seems rare nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, especially if you guys kept it consistent. And so it's safe to say that's how many, like, overall members have stayed throughout the years. I mean, you have 2 originals. But
well, so I guess you could say 2 originals because Brad and I did start it together. However, when I think of the original lineup of the band in my mind was, Brad, Tim, Scott, myself, Chuck, and Jared. Chuck, like I said, he was with us for a few years. Jared left after a couple of years, and then came back. So as of right now, Jared is back as the drummer again. So Josh Stage was our drummer for 15 years and left to pursue other projects, and then we brought Jared back.
Oh, crazy. So you keep...
And then Jared and Brad actually have a really cool side project going. It's called Dem Horny Funkers, and it's an all-cover band, and it's all, top 40 funky kind of stuff. And that's really what they're pursuing at the moment, because I'm so busy with the studio, and I've got my own my own band called the Mercenaries, which is really a lot the same. You know, we play, we've each got horn sections in the band, things like that. But anyways, yeah, as of right now, Jared Edwardson is back as our drummer again.
So you keep it pretty close knit either way. It's like
Absolutely.
years later, someone comes back, like, yeah, let's get the original drummer. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how? What was like the time frame of when you put out all these albums? You said it was like 96 to.
So yeah, the first album that we put out was 1995, and that was 2211 Sample. And then after that, the next album was Fives, and that was released in 99. We released the follow-up to that in 2000. Oh boy, is that right? Yeah, 2005. Now, between 99 and 2005, that's a long span to go between releasing albums. When we released Fives, the floodgates really opened for us. We were signed to Hard Knocks Records when that album was released. And Hard Knocks Records at that time, like the big band on that label was Puddle of Mud, if you know who they are.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of other bigger names on that label as well. And as soon as we released the album, within 2 weeks, I got a phone call from the president of the label, Mark Burchett, telling me that MTV was interested in using our stuff on the Tom Green show. That was, right away after we released the album. And so then once that happened, we had offers pouring in to play all over the place. And that was when we really started to open for nationals. Right after that happened, we got an offer to open for Jackal on a couple shows, Caroline Spine, Power Man 5000, Saliva, Drowning Pool. And we did a ton of cool stuff. So, and even when we weren't opening for those bands, we were on the road ourselves. Right. So, it didn't really enter our minds to really record a follow-up album until it was like, wow, it's been a few years, and it's time to do something new.
If you can do that good off that one, why not? It's not that you were like probably trying to milk it. It was just kind of like naturally happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that much success that quickly. And so did you guys get a couple song placements as far as like MTV shows?
Yeah, we did. So on Tom Green Uncensored, the home video was the big one that we got. And there was a song off of the Fives album that got placement on there. And it was a great segment. Fabio was in it. And the segment starts with Fabio showing Tom Green his new stereo system, right? And he goes to push play, and it's our song playing on there. And then after that, Fabio's doing wheelies up and down the road in front of his house on a motorcycle, and then the rest of the song is playing for that. It was a pretty cool little clip. And then we ended up turning up in a couple of other home videos too. Some of them were more regional, and some of them were a little bit bigger. But that MTV Tom Green Uncensored was definitely the big one.
So, okay, so then by the time you put out your technically third album, was it kind of like almost like a higher pressure expectation because you had so much success?
Well, there was definitely pressure with that one. I mean, we wanted to.
You're still signed, right?
Yeah, we want. Of course, you always want to top what you did last. Yep. And we had some really good offers coming in. One major label offer that came in that we really considered and ended up turning down. With the release of that third album, Eclipse Prevail. And the other thing that was significant about that was that we started recording it at the studio in Madison, which was called Sleepless Nights, that we had recorded Fives at, but we finished the album in my studio. I put together a home studio, and things weren't working out at Sleepless Nights for a couple of different reasons, and so we decided to take the sessions and finish them up ourselves. And so it was really independently recorded, produced, released, distributed, everything. We did that all ourselves on the third album.
Oh,
so there was pressure coming from a lot of different areas. A lot. Pressure to succeed, pressure to show progression in musicianship and songwriting, and also now we have our own studio and our own label and our own everything. So
were you Were you guys weren't signed to the Hard Knock still, or
No Hard Knocks Records. No, we never officially parted ways with Hard Knocks Records, but Hard Knocks Records downsized. So they went from being a record label to HK Manufacturing, and they were a simple, a distributor then. And once that happened, so our contract with them was up. It just simply didn't renew.
was that like coincidentally when like people weren't buying music as much?
Yes,
So they
it
downsized.
came along with the advent of everything going digital, and
Right.
right in the early 2000s there, like 2002, 2003 and forward, when the internet really became mainstream. Of course it was, it was mainstream before then, but to me, that's when I remember things really starting to kind of blow up to where, YouTube was a big thing. And, at that time you had Napster and you had LimeWire and you had all of those, websites, and buying CDs wasn't as big of a thing anymore when you could just go ahead and download them.
Yeah, exactly. People just
Yeah.
download them and then burn them themselves when they'd actually play a CD.
Yes.
But yeah, that makes sense. So okay, so the following next three albums you independently recorded and marketed yourself. And now did you
Yep.
use some experience, some connections through the peak of the Hard Knock records and whatnot, or
Absolutely. We used every connection we had. And to be honest, those were some hard years. Those were some hard years for the band. And even though we were still opening for nationals and still doing some really cool shows, still writing, looking back on it, I think that the pressure we put on ourselves to independently do everything really started to get to us, and kind of led to the creativity starting to fizzle a little bit. And, there were tensions within the band like there are in any band. There was never a point in time where we ever, we never had anything boil over, thankfully. But we did have a lot of tension, and it was a different scene. It was a different scene from, like, I would say 2007 to 2009 or 10. And then that's when Josh left, was after that. And once he left and Jared came back, for about a year there, we had a really good, fun time because we decided not to record anymore. We were just like, fuck it. Let's just play some cool shows. Let's just make this fun again. And so we did. We opened for Ace Frehley. We opened for Quiet Riot. We opened for Taproot during that time, which, those were some of the funnest shows ever, especially Quiet Riot. I mean, a lot of people think this is funny, but I was like so proud to open for Quiet Riot. I mean, that's when I was a kid, Quiet Riot was the thing. And opening for Ace Frehley, Kiss is my favorite band. And opening for Ace Frehley, that was cool leading up to it. Actually, opening for Ace Frehley was a bit of a disappointment because he turned out to be an asshole. So let that be a lesson. If you want to meet your idols, I'll tell you what, you're not always in for what you're hoping for.
yeah,
But yeah,
grain of salt, right? Or just
exactly. But we had a lot of fun, and then Scott left the band in 2011. And the last show he did with us was actually the Ace Frehley show. I remember that vividly because it was November 11th, 2011. So it was 11/11/11 at the Rave in Milwaukee. And we did that gig, and then that was it. Scott left the band, and he moved to Iowa. But the four of us continued, and we did record some more. We recorded and released two singles. One was called Opus, and the other one was called Jupiter. And then we started work on another full-length album that was never completed, and the reason for that was largely because of me opening my studio here. And then once I opened my studio, we decided, okay, let's just kind of take a break for a little while, and then and we did, and that was 2015. So we've done a couple of shows since then, but the grind that we were at before, we have never so far haven't gotten back to.
So how much do you think of a new album do you have like almost completed?
Oh, we got the vast majority of it completed. In fact, everything's completed except for Brad's guitar tracks on that album.
Maybe this will get them going.
Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. I mean, that album will be completed when that album is supposed to be completed, and I believe that. It's like things happen in their due time, and if you feel like you're forcing the creative process, it's time to stop the creative process, because that's not creativity. That's, if you're meeting a deadline with your creative process, of course you have to in some cases, but the main thrust of good music does not come from making it happen. It comes from allowing it to happen.
Right, right. Especially when the recording and writing process, like I would say on the promotion process, that's when you got to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Although, yeah,
Yes.
sometimes you just fall into place sometimes, but all right. So I guess you kind of started you kind of started the studio you're at now, Gemini Studios,
Yeah,
almost as a result of having a home studio, and then it kind of evolved into this.
exactly.
And then how did it ultimately turn into a radio station?
Well, the radio station is actually a separate entity. So, and really, it's pretty funny because uh, by pure coincidence, I started with the radio station and opened the new location of Gemini within literally 2 weeks of each other. The opportunities both popped up right at the same time. So the radio station, my involvement in it came about because I got a phone call from the then president of the radio station, whose name is Yuri Rashkin. And he told me he's starting a radio station and they're going FM soon. At that point in time, they were an internet podcast based station, but they were going on FM. And he was wondering if I would like to do a local music show. And I just immediately said yes. I mean, I like to take opportunities when they come my way, and I just said yes. I think that would be a lot of fun, so I took it. And that with the radio station evolved. So I started as a show host on my own. In 2015, I joined the board of directors of the station in late 2016, and then I was elected president of the station in 2019, and I'm president right now of the station.
That's
And we went through a really tumultuous period in late 2018, early 2019 financially, to where the radio station wasn't doing very well. And we had to make some changes. And so one of those changes, the main change was the building we were at, the original building we were at, was very expensive. And at the time, I had Gemini Music Studios, which I still do, and I had an open space here. But I thought, well, why don't we just move the radio station here, and we'll save ourselves $2,800 a month in the process. And then so that's what we did. And
booth basically.
What's that?
You set up another room for like a studio booth and whatnot.
Well, yeah. So the radio station has currently it occupies a space here in Gemini Music Studios. It's a good sized space. I'm not exactly sure how big it is, but it's one big wide open main room that I would say you could easily fit 10 people in, and then it's got a little recording booth off to the side of it. And that's just for the radio station. And then we still occupy a small space at the original building we were located in, but that's where our transmitter and antenna is located only. So it's a very small space there. So right now we're operating out of 2 spaces, and the plan is to completely have everything wrapped up and moved over here by 2021.
Okay, so Gemini Studios, what we know now in Janesville, you've been there since 2015.
Yes.
And then it then developed into, what is it, WADR? Janesville.
WADR, yeah. So
2000.
yeah, so both entities are, one half Gemini Music Studios here, the other half WADR. Yep.
But it's been pretty recent since it moved there, like 2 years, you said?
Yeah, even
2018 or 2000?
not even quite 2 years, about a year and a half.
Cool. So that's cool, man. So how many, do you only host one show, or do you have multiple shows?
I host 2 shows. So In the Stratosphere is my main show, and that's my baby. I love that show. That's local music. So of course I play a lot of the bands that I produce here at Gemini. Candace Griffin, Bree Morgan Reloaded, the Red Flags, Gas Can Alley. A lot of the bands that have recorded here get played on that show, but that's, certainly not criteria to be on the show. I'll play anybody that's either from the area or music that was recorded and produced in the area, whether or not I was involved with it.
Yeah, thanks for playing some of my stuff, man.
No, and I just played Shady Bone Groove last night, brother.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. I always keep a connection there, and still similar thing to what you do is try to keep playing with band members who still want to play and whatnot. So I guess I'm kind of unofficial local or something. Born and raised,
Yeah, definitely. No, you're from here. You're from here, no doubt, man.
And what's the other show called?
The other show is called Essential Albums, and now that show I produce, and I occasionally host it, but I like to bring in guest hosts as much as possible. And so, the name Essential Albums. Well, so albums that have been socially or culturally significant. Albums that maybe were instrumental in changing the recording process as we know it. And for example, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is one album that we reviewed on there. And of course, in the recording of that album, the first synthesizers that were ever widely used, it started with that album. Backmasking, recording techniques like that were officially, used in that album first. So, I mean, it was significant for that reason, not to mention how culturally impactful the music was. Nirvana Nevermind is another album that we review on that show. And what we do is, we talk about the album itself. We talk about maybe its chart placement. We talk about why it was as important as we're saying. And then we play the album in its entirety. So it's like front to back, side A, side B, every song. We don't skip a beat. And if it takes 2 episodes to do that, we'll do a 2-episode show.
Right on, man. That sounds awesome, man. And that can just be, any type of genre style. You can go through any era or time period of music to have classic albums, or essential albums, I should say.
Absolutely. Yeah. So far, Miles Davis Kind of Blue is one of the albums that we've reviewed. Johnny Cash Live at Folsom Prison. Like I said, the Beatles, Nirvana, just a whole ton of Amy Winehouse is another album that was on there. The Eagles, Hotel California, a lot of different albums. And we've got plans, for another 6 episodes right now, but those episodes have been postponed because of the COVID crisis here.
Right. Okay, so we've gone through your main band, which is kind of, your thing you never stop working on, even though you guys take breaks and whatnot, go on hiatus temporarily. But you've also kind of been always involved in cover bands as well, kind of help with the bread and butter and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Right. Any of those? What are you doing now? Like, what's your main? You said the Mercenaries. That's one of your newer metal bands. It's mainly original, or?
No, the Mercenaries. We're a purely a cover band, and that band is so not metal at all. We play a pretty wide variety though. So it's a 9-piece band. We have a 3-piece brass section in that band. We got keys, bass, 2 guitars, 2 vocalists as well. And we play everything from Chicago, 25 or 6 to 4 and Saturday in the Park, to Toto, Hold the Line, to some Taylor Swift stuff, to just all kinds of different stuff that would be very familiar to a crowd, but it's very, very funky stuff. And in this band, I'm not singing at all. I purely play bass, and I love that so much. It's maybe the most fun I've ever had in a band. Not only because it's the freedom to kind of sit back and open up the barriers as far as what I'm able to do on this one instrument, but also because there's literally no drama in this band. There's nothing, no pressure like what I'm used to as far as, writing, recording, gigging, all of that. I'm the only one in the band that doesn't work for the Mercy Health System. We have a cardiologist who is a heart surgeon in this band. Everybody else, like we doctors and nurses and everything else from the Mercy Health System. I happen to be the one person that is not, healthcare professional in the band.
Cool. Well, I guess that's almost the double-edged sword of the original band thing. You always, as much as it can kind of be fun to like express what you're writing and all, and to have success, but at the same time can be equally as frustrating, or the pressure and all that. And so this band, you kind of just get to have fun more, and you're probably a good enough player where you don't have to think about what the hell you're playing. You're just fucking jamming, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of times where that's the case, but I mean, there's a lot of challenging material too, because when you start looking at the '70s jazz fusion stuff, a lot of those bass lines are pretty challenging, and so it's been back to basics for me in a lot of ways, as far as relearning techniques on my instrument and perfecting those techniques as well. When in 2211 playing bass and singing lead, I fell into a routine to where I did what worked. And a lot of times doing what works doesn't require you pushing yourself. It doesn't require you expanding your boundaries. And yeah. In this band, I'll tell you, I'm expanding my boundaries every time we play. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool, man. So, and I would imagine that, between 2211 or this band, you're probably getting a whole different perspective of venues. You're getting completely different crowds and places you're performing, right? Because
absolutely,
just do completely different stuff when you're an all funky cover fun band, danceable type shit, right?
Absolutely. That's a great point. The venues we performed at with 2211 were, far and wide. We had we played regionally. So, I mean, we played Dubuque, we played, in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, all over the place. But I mean, it was largely a circuit. We hit the same places and over and over and over again for years. And with that came a lot of familiar faces in the crowd over and over again. And with this band, it's always new, at least so far.
Right. Well, and it's probably more like, I guess the venues with the original band, that's like people playing a cover charge to see you, as opposed to like this type of band, you might be doing like some, like outdoor event where it's just the whole community's there, the whole town's there, whatever.
It's funny you say that, actually, yes, because the first gig we were supposed to play this summer was Music at the Marv, which here in Janesville, Wisconsin, is on Courthouse Hill. There's this great outdoor pavilion that's the Marvin Roth Pavilion, so they call it Music at the Marv, right? And we had this gig booked for, I believe, January 23rd, that coincided with a bike race fundraising event. And typically every year that's a big crowd down there for that. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. But definitely a lot of outdoor stuff. We played at the Anchor Inn last summer, which was the last gig that we played. It turned out to be, at the end of July. And then, and that was Dem Horny Funkers, which is Brad and Jared's band, and then Mercenaries, my band, coming together and playing a show. And that was an outdoor event, and that was a well-attended event that went off without a hitch. It was just a blast. And then we decided to take the fall months, and we were going to learn some new material. Kimberly, one of our vocalists, was due to have a baby, as well as our other vocalist, Abe, his wife, was also due to have a baby, all at the same time. So we thought, okay, we'll hunker down, we'll learn some stuff, we'll rehearse, let them have their family time, and then we'll get back out there in the spring of 2020. And unfortunately, now we have the coronavirus to deal with, but we're very excited for when we are able to get back out there.
We're all just sitting in limbo, wondering when we're getting back to work.
Yeah, that's about it.
I mean, because it's like, even though the bars, venues, restaurants, like they can kind of stay open to an extent, but like hiring a musician or a band, that'd be another whole big step, which
Yeah, not gonna happen right now.
is unknown, man. But let's not get into that shit.
Right, right. That's exhausting. That's exhausting. Yeah.
So shit, man, you've been in the music game forever, man. You've been since practically your parents conceived you. You were already in it.
Yeah, I literally was born into it. I really was. It's I've never known, what a world without music was like. In fact, I remember when I was a kid, I remember slowly starting to realize, you know what, not everybody's life is like this. It was about fifth grade before it really hit me, you know.
Like,
Um,
if people don't get to do this, jam with their family all the time, go on road trips all the time.
yeah, no, that's where I come from, brother.
But that's at least a good age to realize it, I guess. You're like, shit, man, I got a cool life, or cooler or something, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, you already talked a bit about 2211 and a couple awesome people you opened for. Do you have like any like particular favorites or like an awesome highlight, maybe an awesome song, or
Well, so I would say that if I had to pin down one show that was my favorite show, it would be when 2211 opened for Zach Wilde's Black Label Society.
hell yeah,
And that was, at that point in time, it wasn't the largest crowd we'd ever played in front of, but it was a big, big crowd. And one of the bonuses that night was that Robert Trujillo was the bassist in Black Label Society on that particular night. He wasn't the normal bassist, but he was filling in. And I grew up loving Robert Trujillo. He was the bassist for Suicidal Tendencies.
yo,
When I first started playing bass, that was like the slap bass player that was out there. And then he went on to Ozzy Osbourne and eventually to Metallica. And at this point, he was between Ozzy and Metallica. And I had just gotten a new bass. And I remember standing backstage at the door to the stage, ready, waiting to go on. I had my new bass on and it was warming up. And I heard somebody say, "Oh, that's a cool bass, man." And I turned around and it was Robert Trujillo. And I was like, "No way." And he said, "Can I try that out?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, you can try it out." Gave him the bass and he played on it for a couple minutes. And then he said, "Yeah, that's awesome." And he gave it back to me. He said, "All right." He said, "Knock him dead, kid."
hell yeah.
And so we went out and we played. And then later that night, our drummer ended up going to breakfast with him. So he was a really down to earth guy, and that was one of the experiences, meeting one of my idols that actually was just as cool as it could have possibly been.
Oh,
So we all hung out that night. Zach Wilde also was a bit of a surprise. They couldn't find him at the beginning of the show. His band was out there playing, and they were still looking for him. They found him on the tour bus. I guess he had fallen asleep, they brought him in, and he was wasted. The guy was wasted. But they got him out onto the stage, and when he hit that stage, man, it was like a different person. He played just at an amazing level. You couldn't tell he at all. It sang and played great. That was my favorite show, and it was my favorite show. One of the reasons for that, my brother idolized Zach Wilde. Just loved him growing up. I remember when I was in high school, I bought the Ozzy Osbourne Live and Loud box set, and my brother and I spent hours just at home listening to that. And so when my brother got into playing guitar, that was his guy. And so I was really excited to open for Zach for that reason, because I knew my brother was so into it. So that was just a lot of fun. Yeah.
did you get
And
to
as
hang
far
out?
as songs, the songs that I'm the most proud of would come off of the Fives album. And two of them in particular, Baby Beluga and Stone's Throw, are the two that I would say stick out to me the most.
Right on. Hell yeah. And all right, so how about any like memorable or some of your favorite bands you've recorded at your studio?
Oh, yeah. That's, you know,
Not to play favorites, but.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'll tell you, I always really loved working with the Red Flags. The Red Flags, um, so first of all, uh, the main core of the band is two brothers, Gabe and Jonah. And, so right off the bat, I felt a kinship with them because I'd always grown up working with my brother. So you know, and they just had this unique style, unique energy, and very energetic too. And the really unique thing about them is that they would go from being a three-piece to a two-piece a lot. So they'd have a bassist, and then they wouldn't have a bassist, and it would just be Gabe and Jonah, guitar and drums, and Gabe would sing. Um, and they recorded two albums here, in fact, and I really enjoyed working with them. Candace Griffin is one of the artists I'm producing right now, and she's at the tail end of her second album that she's recorded here. I love working with her because when she comes in with her stuff, it's already fully written, ready to go, which that's not always the case. But I also do play bass and drums on her albums, and she gives me full freedom to do whatever it is that I feel is appropriate. So we work very well together in that aspect. And when it's all said and done, I mean, I've got a few reasons to be proud of that project because I'm performing on it as well as producing it. But it is her project. Candace Griffin is a great songwriter, great performer, great singer. And then I did some work with Bree Morgan, Reloaded there for a while, and they were a lot of fun to work with too.
And are all these guys local?
They're all local. They're all local, yes.
That's nice, man. That's awesome.
Produced a few hip hop artists here too, which, I mean, I'll tell you, at first that was really kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone. But after having worked with a few hip hop artists, I ended up with a couple of groups that I've worked with that I think I was really able to make, put my stamp on, put my mark on. One of them is Kings. That's the name of the group. And then they have the song called Monsters Inc., which is one of the newer songs that has been released out of here, and really like that a lot too.
Right on, man. That's cool. You're expanding to all music genres, and just keeps you, again, you're challenging yourself on the musical journey.
Yeah, gotta.
All right. Well, damn, man. I think we practically did your musical life story. Is
Pretty
there
much.
anything else you want to put out there, or anything upcoming? Maybe a 2211 album will come out eventually, like you said, when it's ready, when it's meant to be. But anything else you want to
When it's meant to be, we'll finish that one up. As of right now, with the state of things, it's all pretty uncertain. I'm not too sure what the future holds as far as getting out there to perform or anything like that is concerned. But I am using some of my own downtime to work on my own stuff. So I've got my own one-man band project, which I'm calling September Sky. I have a full album recorded and ready for release. I'm kind of trying to pick the right moment, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and put that thing out there pretty soon here, man, because it's done. It's done. Right. So well, September Sky, yeah.
Maybe, with all this happening, it's better of a chance for people to listen to it more. If people got more time, and, who knows, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's a one-man band, and you play every stem, every track.
It's all acoustic guitar and vocal. So it's all acoustic. That's all it is. Just me, my guitar, and singing. And yeah,
that's dope, man. I'd like to hear that, man. I always like the acoustic version of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of them almost have like a metal influence, acoustic, or.
Absolutely. In fact, that was one of the biggest challenges in recording this album. Was, that's my main genre, and it doesn't always lend itself very well to acoustic, but I was able to find the way to do that, and the way that I found to do that was to simply just play it like I would play it normally, and just an acoustic guitar instead, and adjust the vocal so it's not back off of the heaviness a little bit. And by that, I mean, I just allowed myself to sing the songs rather than trying to sing it in a way that would still sound metal, but, would then also fit acoustic. I just sang the damn songs.
Right.
And I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out.
So are any of these like kind of coexisting? Are they like acoustic versions of 2211 you already have or unreleased?
No, nothing like that. It's all new stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, awesome.
Some covers on there too. Like I covered "Lose Yourself" by Eminem, acoustic on there, and then I also covered "You Don't Mess Around with Jim" by Jim Croce.
Right on. That's a pretty wide variety of covers. I like that. So a mix of acoustic metal. That's fucking dope, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shit. Yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. Well, I appreciate being on, man. Yeah, it seems you got a wealth of musical knowledge, or musical wealth, I should say. It's been like inherited into you, and it's really cool you still keep it going. And it's cool, like, I like that you kind of keep the 2211 thing, like, it never really ends, As long as you guys still want to do it, there's no reason to, like, really call it quits, right?
Exactly.
It can always evolve, it can always get better, and all that jazz, so.
Yeah, when it's appropriate, it will happen again. Those guys are my brothers, and the day will never come when I say that I've left that band. It's, for right now we're doing other stuff, but eventually, I promise you, that band will be on the stage again.
Hell yeah! All right, so just quick, where can we find either the band online, the studio online, or the radio online? Yeah,
so the radio station is janesvilleradio.org. So as of right now, I have the studio's website down. I took this opportunity to kind of reformat that website, but GeminiMusicStudios.com. And then the Mercenaries you can find on YouTube. Right now all we have is a YouTube channel for that band, but if you go on YouTube and you search Mercenaries, and that's MERCYNARIES, Mercenaries, just simply the one word, that our page will come up. And same with 2211. Actually, that's facebook.com/theband2211.
Right on. And you can find Gemini and the Janesville Radio on Facebook too, right?
As well, yes.
Right. Well, cool, brother. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
I'll be in touch, man. Yeah, whenever, who knows when this crazy thing's over, but whenever I'm back in Wisconsin, I'd probably love to record some more tracks there, man. It was a good experience.
Love to have you back, brother. It was a blast last time.
You had a crazy day that day, but I'm glad we made it work.
Yeah. It happens.
What are you gonna do? That's a whole nother podcast, that story, for shit.
Right.
All right, man. That was good talking.
All right.
I'll be in touch. Thanks for playing the tunes on your station, man. Appreciate that.
All right, you bet, brother.
Peace, man.
Take care, Jacob.